Good. All right, let's get started. And today I have standing with me City Council Member Carolyn Evans Shabazz of District D and Councilmember Edward Pollard of District J. Pleased to have Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis from Precinct 1. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is present as well. And then there's Angelica Razzo from Mi Familia, Yvonne Smith from the NAACP, Bishop James Dixon, also one of the officers of the NAACP, and you'll be hearing from him a little bit later on. Let me just say for the media and for those watching from home this afternoon, we'll first discuss an exciting Billboard campaign to increase voter participation in honor of the late Congressman Mickey Leland. And this announcement will be followed by our update on COVID-19 in our community, and Dr. Purse and Chief Pena are also here for that report. 31 years ago, and Commissioner Ellis, quite frankly, doesn't seem that long ago. 31 years ago, on August 7th, 1989, George Thomas Mickey Leland died in a plane crash during one of his humanitarian missions. And Mickey was a fighter for justice, and he cared about the poor, the hungry, those disenfranchised. He believed everyone, but especially people from vulnerable and historically overlooked communities, should have a voice and the power of the vote. And in April, I was proud to join Commissioner Rodney Ellis when a statue, and others, when a statue honoring Mickey Leland was unveiled in Herman Park. And let me just give a great deal of credit to Commissioner Ellis for making that happen. Mickey was a global humanitarian who devoted his life to helping others, and he is worthy of this statue. And quite frankly, all of us here today standing on his shoulders. And today I'm pleased to see that a new Billboard campaign is being launched in Mickey's memory. And as the Billboard says, Mickey worked for change, be part of the process, and vote. We are 83 days from the November 3rd election, and it is important that every voter participate in the process. And as Houstonians and Americans, each one of us has a civic duty to cast a ballot for the person or persons of our choice, and each one of us has a stake in what happens in our city and in our country and county, and quite frankly, all over. On August 6th this year, one day after the anniversary of Mickey's tragic death, we mark the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, and we should also vote to honor that significant legislation and Congressman John Lewis, who passed away recently. We may feel helpless at times because we can't control the pandemic or other issues like jobs and housing, but as proud Houstonians, we do have the power to vote. And I want to thank Clear Channel and Lee Vella for generously donating 5 neighborhood poster panels and 5 large freeway-type bulletins so people can see this message all over the city. But let me stop and let me bring on Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who has been a champion on so many, many issues. And I know Mickey is certainly proud because he was mentored by Mickey Leland. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the use of a city park. You and I both have gotten in a bit of controversy as we have sought to correct history and take a few statutes and street signs down, and we both agreed it's important not only that we reflect history appropriately, but we also seek to memorialize people who've made a difference in our community. So this statute was a joint city-county effort. We're doing many of them under your leadership. It is in Herman Park, next to the Miller Outdoor Theater. The Congresswoman, the Bishop, and others were there. Rep. Lawson was there as well. It was a socially distanced dedication because of COVID-19. But a good friend of the congressman's, Charles Bush, called up and said that he wanted to help facilitate getting billboards up so people would know that that statue is there. So I know Charles is watching from Dallas, so I want to thank him. And he asked me to reach out to Leland, of course, who always comes through. Clear Channel is such a great corporate partner, but he wanted the Hispanic community and the African American community and the Jewish community to be involved. It's too close to the election, so the group that was going to sign on to these billboards from the Jewish community could not do it. But Mi Familia and the NAACP did this jointly, so give them a round of applause. And Leland did it for them. We had other friends who were on that flight. Patrice Johnson, her family might be watching. I sent her mother a nice note. Mayor, she's going to have another birthday, historic one. I think it's going to be that 9-0 pretty soon, so I'll work with you, send a resolution. But look, Texas has some of the most restrictive voter laws in the country. There are a lot of barriers that put in place to make it difficult for people to vote. Over Harris County, we just decided to create an Office of Elections Administrator to try to put more of a focus on registration and running elections as efficiently as possible. If we were gonna encourage people to go and see a statue, I thought the Congressman Patrice and all of the individuals on that flight, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, I think about 16. I'm not looking at my notes because I can't see them with a mask that protects you all today. But all of those people were working on a humanitarian mission 31 years ago, so we thought it was appropriate, if we're going to encourage you to go and see the statue, that we tie it in with a social justice message. So that we did. So thank you very much. Now, Mayor, if I might deviate, because we may need him again, I'm going to let Leland say a word.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Mayor Turner, thank you so much. Congresswoman Lee, council members. It's our pleasure as Clear Channel Outdoor to donate these boards to this effort that reminds people it is their right to go out and vote. And in just a few days, we'll be exercising that right. So we want to make sure that everybody sees this message, and we're working with the NAACP and Mi Familia. So thank you very much for all the effort. And Mayor, I will tell you that in the 4 weeks or more that these are going to be up, it'll create 12.7 million market impressions. So it represents about a $35,000 donation to these groups to get this message out, and we're happy, more than happy to do it for this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, and thank you, Lee Vela. Now let me bring on Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee.
Mayor, thank you so very much, and thank you to Commissioner Ellis. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Mickey, for those of us who had the privilege of being under his tutelage and knowing his heart. This is something that he would celebrate. Let me thank our neighbor to the north, Mr. Bush. Let me thank Lee Vela, who I think has been at the cutting edge of social programs and information for many years. I think he did something with me on gangs and knowing how important parks are. So I'm glad to be at home with Mayor Turner. Thank you. And the council members, and of course, I want to thank VOTA and the NAACP for what they have done. Councilman Poland and Councilmember Shabazz, thank you so very much. This is more than important, it is significant. There are frightened people about voting, Mayor. They're frightened because they have adhered to your early messages. They're at home. They have done their work at home. They have not come out. And now they know of the importance of the civic duty that they have. I just came off of a 2-hour call with members from around the nation, members of Congress, Speaker Pelosi, and the main topic for people to know it is a loan because they've been characterized as a business. Because right now, our postal workers have been denied overtime. And that is impacting our Social Security, but it is going to impact our votes. So we want to provide that $25 billion, and we also want to take a suggestion of drop boxes for mail ballots so that people are not frightened. They can go safely to a drop box, and then procedures can be in place for those mail ballots to be picked up. We want to do everything we can to follow Mickey Leland's change attitude. He did work for change. I'm privileged to have been able to be tutored by him, and he has a legacy of voting because he lived through and before the 1965 Voting Rights Act. He lived before he could get to the state legislature because of the Voting Rights Act. He lived before anyone went to the United States Congress because the Voting Rights Act was not in place. So today I believe there are two things that we must focus on: a thank you, a message of hope for Mickey Leland, and the idea that our voting has to be allowed in all forms, and that we must support the Postal Service and pass the HEROES bill along with the money for the mayor's public funding, not for him personally, to shore up city services, $175 billion for schools, and to continue our testing. And that's what I think Mickey Leland has stood for. His change is for the better. And we're going to continue to work for you to get out there and vote in whichever form you choose to do so. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Congresswoman. Bishop James Dixon, representing the NAACP.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. It's an honor to be here today in the Legacy Room, and I think it's appropriate that we're in the Legacy Room talking about the legacy of George Mickey Leland. To our Congresswoman and to our Councilwoman and all who are assembled today, my colleagues of the NAACP and from VOTA, and Commissioner Lee, thank you so very much for your stalwart leadership. Ellis, I said Lee. Well, when you're working in Houston, you're under Sheila Jackson Lee some sort of way. But we are thankful to God for Commissioner Ellis's bold work on making sure that the legacy of Mickey Leland continues, and his partnership with the city and the mayor is just stalwart. Let me be very brief and concise. I'll never forget one Thursday afternoon, Mickey Leland sat me down outside of the Four Seasons and had a 45-minute conversation with me about leadership and about serving. I never thought that that would be the last conversation we would have. But he talked to me about leading and change. At that time, our church was a low wood frame building. I didn't have 4,000 or 5,000 people. But he said to me, "You're the future." And I'll never forget that as long as I live. Today, as I stand here in this legacy room with you, I owe a debt of gratitude to his legacy for not only challenging me, but charging me and believing that every coming generation would be responsible for continuing the values and the ideals that makes our country great and our city and county great. And voting is certainly at the center of that. Today, as Allison Leland has worked with Commissioner Ellis and others, isn't it amazing that she can see that her husband did not die in vain? As we continue this message, we must, and I want to thank you, Lee, because the message must be visual, it must be verbal, and it must be vociferous. We must all engage in freeing people from all forms of voter suppression and reminding every citizen in America, in this county, in this state, this city, that your vote is powerful, whether you're in Fifth Ward or River Oaks, whether you're in Acres Homes or Sunnyside. Every vote counts because every person counts. And greatness, like Mickey Leland, is not simply being popular, it's being powerful enough to make change happen. And there's no greater way to do it in the name of democracy than to vote. Thank you, Mayor, for hosting us on today.
Thanks, Bishop. Now let me bring on Angelica Rasa with Mi Familia Vota.
Good afternoon. I'll make my remarks in English and then in Spanish. My name is Angie Raza. I'm the Texas State Director for Mi Familia Huerta, and it's such a thrill to be up here with community leaders and elected officials that are just as passionate as we are about getting our Harris County residents out to vote. All elections are important, but the one in November is particularly important and personal. COVID-19 has really disproportionately impacted our community through economic loss, family loss, and heartbreak. So we know that voting is just an opportunity to make sure that we're electing folks that are committed to protecting our communities through this pandemic and beyond this pandemic. We also understand that if you are too young to vote or you're not a U.S. citizen, you're still an essential part to our democracy. And I highly encourage you to use your powerful voice, story, and experience to get those out around you to come out and vote this November. Mi Familia Huerta looks forward to working with our local officials and our community partners and ensure that every person that wants to vote in November can do so, and they have the appropriate information, resources, and methods to do so in a safe and healthy manner in a way that fits them. If you have questions about voter registration or election information, I encourage you to call our hotline, which is 1-833-268-2667 or 1-833-VOTAMOS. So let's continue the legacy that Mickey Leland left behind for us and continue to work together to make sure that our communities are thriving in a beautiful Harris County and country that we've elected. Mi nombre es Angélica Razo, soy la directora estatal de Mi Familia Huerta en Texas. Siempre es un placer de estar aquí con mis colegas y también líderes de la comunidad que comparten esa misma pasión para involucrar nuestra comunidad en las votaciones. Todas las elecciones importan, pero la de noviembre es especialmente importante y también personal. El COVID-19 ha traído mucho dolor a nuestra comunidad a través de pérdidas económicas, pero también de nuestros miembros de familia y amigos. Votar en noviembre es una oportunidad para elegir candidatos que están comprometiendo a proteger nuestras familias y nuestra comunidad durante la pandemia, pero también después de la pandemia. Si usted no puede votar porque no tiene la edad o por su estatus migratorio, todavía es una parte esencial para nuestra democracia. Y le animo que usted use su voz y su historia y su experiencia a sacar a su familia y amigos a votar este noviembre. Mi familia vota va a continuar a trabajar con nuestros elegidos y nuestros líderes comunitarios para asegurarnos que cada persona que quiere votar en noviembre lo pueda hacer de una manera que es segura y saludable para ellos. Debemos que continuar el legado que dejó Mickey Leland y trabajar juntos para crear una nación y una comunidad donde todos pueden prosperar. Gracias.
Thank you, Angel. And in essence, Angel was saying it's important to get out and vote. And if you have any questions, please contact Me Familia Vota, and they'll be able to address your concerns. All right. Before we turn to the COVID update, are there any questions as it relates to the billboards that are going up, the importance of voting? Any questions to any of these individuals as it relates to voting? Anything? Okay. All right. Thank you all so very much. I'm sorry? Congresswoman, I'm sorry.
Mayor, I just wanted to add that we can do registration now. And so I hope that these billboards connote not only can you vote, but if you haven't registered, the registration period is still open in Harris County in the state of Texas. Please get registered. Thank you.
Thank you all. Commissioner Ellis, thank you so very much, man. Appreciate you. Bishop, thank you. Okay, Dr. Purse, Chief Pena, Chief Aceveda, you'll come up. Lee, thank you. Good channel. Thank you so very much. Council members can stay. Where did Councilmember Shabazz go? Okay. All right. Councilmember Shabazz is heading to D, the District of Destination, so she's heading to District D. All right. With regards to today's COVID update, today the Houston Health Department reports 431 new cases of COVID-19, bringing Houston's total to 55,940. So today the number is 431. Unfortunately, we are adding 12 new persons to the list of those who have died as a result of COVID-19, which will bring that total, the number of people who have died who lived inside the city of Houston, to 585. So 431 new cases, people who are tested positive, and then 12 more people. Unfortunately, most of the people who have died are Hispanic, and as you can see on this list. And then in addition to that, there is one person in his 50s who died with no underlying health conditions. So again, we recognize that though our numbers in many ways from the hospitals as well as the numbers that we're reporting are starting to trend in the right direction, there are still way too many people who are dying as a result of this virus, and the disproportionate impact is on people of color, in this case particularly with the Hispanic community. The City of Houston Health Department is boosting in other neighborhoods with a high positivity rate. Over the weekend, our Better Together Todas Juntas Mejor teams visited 981 units at 3 apartment complexes in high positivity majority Hispanic communities. And Councilmember Pollack, I believe they were even in District J over the weekend. We are working to educate families about the virus. We are sharing information in English, Spanish, and other languages to help slow community spread and to stop the virus from continuing to take a deadly toll within our city. And getting tested is critically important. And many people who have the virus never show any symptoms. 40% of people infected with the virus never show any symptoms, but they can still spread this virus. And that is why it is important to protect yourself and others by wearing a mask and getting tested. And there are a number of testing sites that exist in the city of Houston. And the larger ones, Butler, Del Mar Stadium, doesn't cost you anything, and you don't even have to register for these testing sites, and they are available for you to go and be tested. Those are the nasal swabs. If you don't want the nasal swabs and you want to do the saliva test in your mouth, you can go to Minute Maid every single day, 8 to 4 p.m. Again, those are free testing sites. And so let me encourage people to take advantage of all, and those are just 3 of the many testing sites that exist all over the city of Houston. Please go and get tested. It's better to know than not to know. And so I want to encourage people, again, until there is a vaccine for this virus, please go and be tested. And if you haven't been tested, for example, in the last 30 days, then you need to go and get tested. If you've never been tested, then you need to go and get tested. So let me just encourage you to do that. It'll make you feel better. It'll make those you around feel better, so please do that. If you test positive, to protect your loved ones and friends, you need to isolate yourself and let those who have come into contact with you know about your positive test. And then when our contact tracers contact you, please don't hesitate to share with them the information that they are needing. It will help your family members and those that you have been in contact with. Again, let me encourage everyone to mask up. Please do that to protect others from you and protect them from you as well. So please mask up. And then again, we don't want anybody to get a $250 ticket. I am appreciative to the fact that when our police officers have approached people and warned them, people have put on their masks. And so that's good news, and I think that bodes well. Statewide, the positivity rate is higher than 20%. But in the city of Houston, our positivity rate, as of, I think today, and Dr. Purse can correct me, is right around 14.3%, which is, again, trending in the right direction, but we need to be at 5% or below. And that is the goal that we have set by the end of this month, the end of August. The goal is to bring that positivity rate down to 5%, to get below 5%, and then our testing and contact tracing program can really be very effective. And one of the major tools that we have to reduce that positivity rate reduce the infection rate, lower the positivity rate, but that's where we need to be, especially as we talk about going back to school on the other side of Labor Day. The positivity rate needs to be at 5% or lower than that. And slowing the spread, reducing the number of positive daily cases, and lowering the positivity rate, critically important, especially as our children start the process of returning to school. So that's the charge. That's where we are in the month of August. Want to provide you that report. If you come home and go to your home or your apartment and you see one of these door hangers, for example, in Spanish, that's right there with that cape on. Some people have been calling in thinking that this was a picture of me, Chief Acevedo. They saw the biceps. Let me assure you, this is not a picture of me, you know. But I can see how you can get confused. Congresswoman, yeah, you know. On my few days off this week, I have been, you know, exercising and stuff. Let me stop. But let me just say, you got to laugh a little bit these days, because I tell you, there's too much stress and anxiety that's out here. Put your mask on, please. And when you're out and about in the presence of other people in public, put your mask on. If you do that, I promise you, if you do that, and if the city of Houston has compliance of about 90% or greater, I promise you, if you do that, the positivity rate in the city of Houston will come down, as it has started trending down in the city. From the hospital's perspective, based on the numbers that I've seen just this morning, the numbers are very encouraging. A few weeks ago, we had over 2,400 people in our hospitals. Today's numbers, that number may be around 1,200 to 1,300. We are no longer in that phase 2 of the surge in terms of our hospitals. It's all now within phase 1. Those are good numbers. And so the numbers within the hospitals are looking better. Even the positive rate within our community looking better, but we are not yet where we need to be. And let me encourage everyone to continue to be vigilant. And again, if you are sick, please stay home. And if you are not feeling well, okay, please don't hesitate to go to the hospital. Don't get so sick that by the time you get there, it's very difficult for even the best hospital system in the world to help you out. So don't, please, if you're not feeling well, don't just stay there. Seek medical attention and medical care. Now let me pause and let me bring up Dr. Purse. That's not you either, Dr. Purse.
No, it's not. Thank you. Thank you. Mayor, you basically said it all. So I'm going to dive into some, getting a little bit more specific about our testing opportunities. As the mayor pointed out, we have plenty of testing opportunity in the community. And to remind folks that the number of folks who are going to our testing sites has decreased quite a bit. We're about a third of what we were at one point. So there's lots of capacity at the testing sites that we've had for a while, and now we have even more testing sites. So on the screen, you're going to see that we've got listed in cooperation with some of our colleagues at Del Mar and Butler Stadium. These are the two stadium sites that have been operating for months now. They are up and running and still available. And if you want to go to them, they can do up to 650 tests a day. And right now we're running it at about 250 tests a day. So there really shouldn't be much of a line. They run Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And if you want to go to Del Mar, you can call 832-393-4220 for an appointment. At Butler, no appointment is necessary. You can just show up and register on site. At Darrell Tully and Kingwood Park, those are two sites that we're working in cooperation with the U.S. Health and Human Services Commission. And they run from 10 a.m. till 7. And they're able to do actually 1,250 tests per day. So very huge amounts of capacity to get lots and lots of tests done. And to register for those, you can either go on site and register when you get there, or if you want to save yourself some time and you have access to a computer, you can register ahead at the email, the website, doineedacovid19test.com. Now, that's a little bit of a mouthful, and it's a little bit of a keyboard full maybe, but there it is for you. doineedacovid19test, all one word.com, and that you can register very easily there so that when you get on site, you'll be processed through a little bit more quickly. And then finally, at Minute Maid Park in Lot C, there's another test site there that is running 7 days a week, and that's running from 8 till 4, as the mayor pointed out, and they can do 2,000 tests per day. So again, tremendous capacity, and no appointment is required, but if you want, you can register ahead of time at texas.curativeinc.com. That's texas.curativeinc.com, and that's the lab company that we're working with for that site, and they've got their webpage. And what I'm hearing from some of the folks who've gone there is that those reports are coming back very, very quickly. So with all these sites, there's an improvement in the lag time of the reports are coming back, and people, you're getting your own reports back very, very promptly. Now, those aren't the only sites. We have other sites. These are just our large, what we're calling our mega testing sites. We can go to the next slide. We'll be able to show you the other test sites that are available across the city, and there's another 15 or so neighborhood test sites that are available, and you can go to any of those as well. And again, the way to register is that same phone number that was for Del Mar at 832-393-4220, or you can visit HoustonEmergency.org, and they will give you a map and get you some directions on how, but you do need to call ahead of time to get the registration for those. And I want to reinforce something that the mayor said and that we've been saying all along. The importance of getting testing is especially for people who think that they may have symptoms or think they may have been exposed to someone. You need to know if you become infected. Now, remember, you can't get tested too early. So if you got exposed to somebody, you're at work or someplace today and you get a call tonight and they tell you that one of your coworkers tested positive. If you go tomorrow, you may get tested too early. You would need to test yourself again. You should quarantine if you were exposed. If you actually meet the qualification of a close contact, you need to quarantine yourself at home. But if you want to know if you then need to quarantine yet others, you would need to go and get tested again. So it gets a little bit confusing. But the bottom line is more testing, more testing, more testing. We have tremendous capacity to do it. And it's very important because, as the mayor pointed out, as we've been saying for quite some time, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of the people who are infected and are unknowingly spreading the virus are doing so because they don't have any symptoms and they think that they're totally fine. That's one of the things that makes this such a challenge. That's why we really want people to go out and get tested. In a perfect world with a magic wand, I would have everybody in the city of Houston tested once a week. And if we could do that, it's totally impossible, I understand, but if we could do that, we would be able to identify everyone who is infected and get their contact tracing done and stop this virus within 2 weeks' time. That's not possible. We have to be realistic. But the one thing we can do is as you can see, we have tremendous testing capacity available. We can get a lot of folks tested, can get you the answers quickly, and by doing that, you break the chain of transmission so that we don't wind up with the large numbers of people that are in the hospital. And I'm sure Chief Pena is going to talk about one of our firefighters who's the intensive care unit. And we need to consider that each and every one of these people who are infected and hospitalized, that was a preventable infection. Nobody was malicious along the way. Certainly somebody who didn't know they were infected spread the virus to somebody else. Totally innocent, but also totally preventable. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Purse. Chief Pena.
Thank you, Mayor. How you doing, Congresswoman? Before I begin, I come to you to humbly ask our community again to pray for Captain Searcy, who's in the intensive care unit. I received word that he was intubated earlier today. He's going to need a lot of prayers, a lot of support, but we're hoping, again, for a full recovery. We did have one firefighter who was released yesterday from the hospital, firefighter Kerry Hunter, and he's going to continue his recovery. Keep him, please, in your prayers, and lift up them and their family and the fire department through this very difficult time. As I get into my report, today we have 129 firefighters that are in quarantine. We've had a total of 234 that have tested positive for coronavirus through the course of this operation. Currently, we have 36 that are still positive. The majority are recovering at home, but we do have Captain Searcy, who's in the hospital, and firefighter Hunter, who was just released, and he's continuing his recovery. And we'll keep them both in our thoughts and in our prayers until they make a full recovery and come back to work. Our occupancy task force, over the last 24 hours, we've had 55 complaints that we responded to. The majority of them, if not all of them, all of them have been resolved voluntarily on site. So we appreciate, again, the business community for the assistance that they've been providing us and themselves in ensuring that we are adhering to the governor's executive order. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something else that we're noticing in looking at our statistics. So what we're noticing is that there are more and more signs that people succumb to diseases in their own beds, okay? Now, part of this could be because they came down with the virus and they didn't seek any treatment. Part of it could also be that they have other ailments that they didn't seek treatment for, or sought 911 too late. So a few numbers, we've seen an increase of about 47% in deaths outside the hospital that we respond to from February to July. From an average of about 14 per day in February to about a little over 20 per day that we're seeing in July. People are just waiting way too long to call 911. If you're having symptoms of a heart attack, chest pain, symptoms of a stroke, respiratory difficulties, do not wait too long to call 911. The notion that going to the hospital is where you're going to get this virus and catch coronavirus at the hospital, that is not based in fact at all. You are much safer calling 911 and being treated at the hospital than you are suffering and trying to ride it out in your living room. So again, we encourage our community to not wait too long to call 911. If you have a true emergency, health emergency or safety emergency, call 911 early. Do not wait too long. Again, the spike, almost 47% increase in the number of out-of-hospital deaths that we've seen just from February of this year. So please do the right thing for yourselves and your families. The fire department is ready to serve. Do not wait to call 911 and allow us to give you the best chance to get the best treatment at our hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Acevedo.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your leadership. And, you know, couldn't help but add up just in that first page of testing available, Doc, and that's 5,000 just on the first page. And when you think about where we began, thanks to your leadership and to the help of all our congressional members, we've come a long way. And now it's just up to people to actually come out and get tested. I'm going to give you a quick report on where we're at in terms of our own department. Then I'll talk a little bit about enforcement. And then lastly, we'll talk about domestic violence. So as of today, as of this morning, we have a total of 129 members of the Houston Police Department that are in quarantine. 103 of those members have already tested positive, with 26 pending results. To date, we've had 459 members of the department that have tested positive, and 356 of the 459 have returned to work. And fortunately, we have only had 2 deaths, but we're holding at 2 deaths when you think about that many people getting sick. I want to extend my prayers again to our friends at the Houston Fire Department. We will be lifting up your members in prayer, and we'll be lifting up our community in prayer. But as in terms of enforcement, we've been fortunate. We've only had to do 2 incident reports so far. But let's just be clear. People talk a lot about patriotism, but I want to talk about being patriots and also being courteous and actually being caring Americans. And that means that we've buried 2 firefighters. We've buried 2 members of our own family. And so the question is, do you want to be a patriot and think of others? Do you want to be a person of faith and think of your neighbors, your friends, first responders, the almost 200 police officers that have died of COVID nationwide? Or do you want to exercise your views that you have a right to get other people sick and ultimately cost them their lives. So I want to thank Houstonians because unlike some other cities, most people as we drive around, as we come up, are being decent, they're being thoughtful, and they're being Houston strong, which is, I think, once again, we're setting the way for the rest of the nation. So let's continue to be patriots and let's continue to be Houston strong. Let's continue to protect one another and show our decency, our collective decency as Houstonians. And lastly, domestic violence. We know that there's a lot of going on at the congressional level, at the federal level, in terms of folks that might need help because they've lost their jobs, and we know that there's a lot of people hurting, and as a result, we're seeing domestic violence calls. We just saw it this morning, a report, I think it was this morning in the Houston Chronicle, to the families out there. Just remember, no matter how tough the circumstances may seem today, there will be better tomorrows, but those better tomorrows will not come if you resort to violence, if you resort to domestic violence. That is not the answer to anything. That's just going to exacerbate the problems for families. So we urge people, step away from each other, give yourself some space, give yourself some room, go to a friend's house, a relative's house, go to the park, just get away from each other. And lastly, especially to the potential victims of domestic violence, know that we do have the full capacity of the Houston Police Department and all of our partners in the front lines, including our private sector partners with the Houston Area Women's Center and others, that we can get you help. Do not feel trapped, no matter what your financial circumstances are, no matter what you think the issues are for you. We have help for you. Please come forward. We're here to help you, because at the end of the day, what we want is we want healthy families, we want safe families, and we want especially our women and children to be safe. So we are fully operational, Mayor. Our partners are fully operational in this area, and we're ready to help, so please call us. And that's my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Acevedo. I do want to highlight to the congresspersons that we use some of the CARES money that we received in the initial package to assist on domestic violence, and quite frankly, even more is needed. So, Congressman Green, I know you are now here. Maybe if you can give us just a brief update on where we are, possibly in terms of additional funding, and Congresswoman Sheena Jackson, you can follow.
Thank you very much, Mayor. 2 points to make. The first is with reference to the testing. I think it's important to say that I have honored your request. I have been tested twice. I don't have symptoms that I'm aware of. I do wear my mask. So I encourage others to behave similarly. With reference to where we are in Washington, D.C., the House has passed a $3 trillion plus package. It includes help for municipalities, local governments, state governments. It also includes monies for those who need help with evictions. You were very generous in working to help persons who were about to be evicted, and it's my understanding that some $15 million was out the door in a matter of minutes. We need to help. My committee, the Financial Services Committee, has appropriated in the HEROES Act $100 billion to help those who are being evicted. Also, $75 billion to help those who are homeowners. We also want to make sure that we get the money to pay the rent, because we cannot assume that the landlords can bear the burden of not having rent paid. So this payment of rent is important, not just a moratorium. A moratorium is better than having people evicted, but having the rent paid is of paramount importance. So I'm proud to say that my committee, under the leadership of the Honorable Maxine Waters, has made it possible through the CARES Act for us to help the renters and the persons who own property as well. Finally, it is important to note that these are very difficult times for everyone. We should not assume that anyone is having a great time of it. And because they're difficult times, please reach out to your neighbors, check on your neighbors, find out what's happening with them. I know that you can't traverse the streets as much as you would like, but you can make a phone call. let people know that you care about them, and in return, hopefully, they will reciprocate. I thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my colleague, Jackson Lee, council member who is standing behind me, or he was when I came to the podium, Dr. Peirce, who's over to my left, if I'm still correct. And thank you ever so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you for letting me join you on the announcements of the numbers that you've made. Let me, in this moment, thank you for your hard work. We are where we are because the city was not shy in going full approach to testing. Let me thank and acknowledge my colleague. I think it is important that we're both here today really focusing on the same points of support and advocacy for the city. And as well, as usual, to thank Dr. Peirce, Chief Acevedo, and Chief Pena. My heart goes out, my prayers go out to all of the men and women who are confronting during their jobs this COVID-19 that has a mind of its own. I want to focus on the fact, Mayor, that I think if we reflect or look at cities, and I'm seeking those numbers, Houston has actually been a major leader on testing. Our access to testing has been enormous. And if you engage with other cities and states, we find that there are challenges that we have tried to confront head on. But it is still important to note that on the national spectrum, Texas, Florida, and California still remain at the highest level of cases as states. And it is very important that scientists are still saying that we should have the jurisdiction to have stay-at-home orders if determined by local officials. And I make that plea again, stay-at-home orders if determined by local leadership, I believe is very important. But testing has been certainly a very important action, and it has been positive. I want to thank you, Mayor, for joining me on my faith initiatives where we have opened testing sites in faith institutions. We look forward to going to the Living Word Fellowship Church this coming week, where we try to reach out to people who are underserved and who are able to come on days that they are not working as essential workers, which includes Hispanic and African American communities and others. I want to finish on the point that it is, I believe, the advocacy of all of our citizens. I heard a plea being made by Chief Acevedo for us to treat each other as if all of us are good Samaritans. We need to continue the advocacy and the support that Congressman Green and myself and other colleagues are doing to get the mayor the funding for local and city governments, county governments as quickly as possible. The strategy and negotiations are still available for creative thinking, if you will. And I think the most serious needs are for your funding. When I say your funding, local and public funding coming from the federal government so that essential services can continue. The money, Dr. Peirce, for testing, so that we can continue testing and contact tracing, and particularly in hotspots with Hispanics and African Americans and other vulnerable populations. And then finally, I think it is very important. I don't think any of us can turn on any form of media without hearing the new attitude that yes, children can become infected or positive, and they can transmit. The main thing that we need to do is to give our school districts the extra COVID-19 funding to be able to ensure that whatever decision is made for opening, they have all the resources necessary for parents, teachers, bus drivers, children, janitors, and anyone else to feel safe. That is an imperative, and I'd almost say that we need to move those dollars right now to our local jurisdictions. I joined with my colleague on the eviction dollars, and I'd only make a plea that if corporate Houston can help the city on support more than they have already done, it is extremely important that we do so to stop evictions and foreclosures for our community. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take any questions that you may have. And while you come, bear in mind that that picture right there by Nick Anderson is a part of our staff, government affairs staff. He did that cartoon, and so I certainly want to acknowledge Nick Anderson. And that's the person in the mask. That's me. That's the younger version. All right, we'll take it.
Dr. Peirce, can you give us an update on how contact tracing is going and any issues you guys might have run into about people not wanting to provide information?
Yeah, so the contact tracing team is, has grown, and we're pretty close to maxed out. I'd have to ask Stephen, was we're actually at the total of 300, but we were very, very close, I know. We do continue to have issues with folks not wanting to share with us who their contacts are. Sometimes it's because when the result comes back, it's been many days, so they have a hard time remembering. Other times we sort of get the sense, I mean, nobody's not, people aren't telling us, I'm not going to tell you, but just my contact tracers, our contact tracers sort of tell us, they can tell in the tone of voice, people are afraid to tell us who their contacts are. And we assure folks that when we reach out to a contact, we don't tell them, who it was that they may have come in contact with. It's all kept very confidential. But there is that reluctance, and as you notice with the predominance of folks of Hispanic ethnicity that are dying, one of my concerns, and I'm founding this purely on my own speculation, but one of my worries is that people are reluctant to tell us whom because they still remain afraid of retribution, immigration issues, et cetera. And that, that has just clouded a very important project that we're trying to get, something to really help people, and that's completely clouding it for really reasons that shouldn't be there. But we do, to answer your question, we are still getting a very small number of contacts per case when we reach out to folks.
And a question for you or the mayor. Austin has in there, the mayor of Austin issued an executive order, and in it, it's encouraging restaurants and services that are open to kind of do their own contact tracing and then have that information available if the city needs to reach out. Is that something that we've ever considered doing here?
So I'll take the first stab at that, and then the mayor can join. With employers, and as we start moving into other areas, we are asking folks that, especially with employers, very often the employee will say, hey, I tested positive. And we are asking them to immediately start the contact tracing within their place of work so those people can go home and quarantine. And that's how we're going to stop it. Because, again, the report coming to the health department from the testing lab may be delayed, but generally employees are telling their employers pretty promptly so we can get ahead of it. It's all about, timeliness. So we have asked them to do that, yes.
As far as customers or patrons?
We've not asked restaurants to do customers, not at this point yet.
We've not done that at this point, but I would encourage people not just to rely on the health department contact tracers. So, for example, whether it's a restaurant or any other type of business where people have tested positive, it would be incumbent upon those individuals to reach out to people that they've been around to let them know. Same thing goes to family members, where people have, for example, been invited to your home and you've tested positive, or you've gone someplace and tested positive. We certainly encourage people to let other people know. And I do know in some cases people are doing that, but that exercising that sort of responsibility helps all of us out. So don't just rely on the city health department to do the contact tracing. But if you've tested positive, number one, quarantine yourself. Okay, don't keep going about and you've tested positive. And number two, contact other individuals and let them know so that they can quarantine as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
TEA is still debating if it will track COVID cases.
Mark, can you use the microphone?
The microphone right there.
The TEA is still debating if it will track COVID cases in schools. If not, does the health department have any plans to do that?
TEA is still debating whether or not they will do contact tracing in schools. If they don't, will the City of Houston Health Department do that type of work?
But yeah, we will, obviously, we will treat it the same as any other case. And by the way, I just got word that we are over 300 contact tracers. We're at 318. So just like with any other case, we would do the contact tracing. We would work with the schools for that. We have been talking with the school ISDs, and it's just the same as with the employer. Very often, the student or the parent will let the school know that somebody tested positive before we may get the test result. And so we've asked them to quickly start, within the school community, doing just like an employer would and do their own contact tracing, letting people know they may have been exposed. Again, trying not to give up who it was that infected them, because that would be a disincentive to future reports, but to let folks know that they need to go ahead and then quarantine themselves so they don't inadvertently spread the virus anymore. So,
And what access would parents have to that data?
again, what?
What access would parents have to that data? Will parents be able to?
We are working with the schools so that, say, student A is test positive. We don't want to give up student A's identity as we talk to the students and actually the parents of students B through L. So we're going to, coach them on how to get that information to the parents, let them know that they were exposed. It doesn't really matter who student A was. It could have been anybody, right? But now the important thing is that those other students know that they've been, within 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes, or they had physical contact, and they meet the criteria to being a close contact, and that they may have become infected, so they need a quarantine for the 14 days. And so that we're coaching them on how to do that.
Thank you. Mayor, I have a question for you also.
Say before you leave the schools, it is my hope, though, that none of the Houston schools, let me put it that they will start on-campus learning until this positivity rate is down to 5% or below. That's my hope, that until the positivity rate is down to 5% or below, I just don't think it would be advisable to have on-campus learning when you have that much community spread.
When can the citizens of Houston start applying for your second rent relief program?
I believe I had the timeline. Someone gave me the timeline the other day. I think the landlords, and this is the second phase, Congressman Green, that we're doing, the $20 million, which is round 2. The landlords, I believe, will start applying next week, and then the following week, then the tenants will start applying. I think I got that right. So I think it's next week will be the landlords, and as you know, what they are agreeing to is that if one of those tenants, let's say you have 200 in a unit, in an apartment complex, if one receives the benefit from the rental assistance, then the landlords are agreeing not to evict any of the tenants in that complex. So the landlords are signing up with the agreement with Baker Ripley. I think that starts next week, and then the following week, the tenants will start to apply. All of that information will be made available probably towards the end of this week or the first part of next week.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, any other questions? Again, let me thank all our congresspersons, Congressman Green, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee. Let me thank Councilmember Edward Pollard in District J for the work that he's doing out in his district, increasing testing. And then, of course, Dr. Purse. Before we leave, 1 second. Chief Aceveda and Chief Pena, if you can come and just say some of the things, especially, Chief Pena, when you talked about people not waiting too late to go to the hospitals. I think that's very important for people to know. And if you all will emphasize that all of the testing sites are available to people, whether you're documented or undocumented, it does not matter, and they are free. If you all would do that in Spanish, I would do it, but I've been talking so long, and my voice is getting hoarse.
Buenas tardes. Mire, quiero repetir lo que dijimos hace unos momentos acerca de del número de personas que fallecen en sus camas. Y lo que estamos notando es que cada vez hay más signos que personas sucumben a enfermedades en sus hogares. Y eso puede ser porque están esperando mucho para llamar al 911 o no quieren acudir al hospital por temor a que el virus esté en el hospital. Eso no está basado en nada cierto. Está uno más seguro y en ir al hospital a que si tienen problemas al corazón, si tienen problemas con respiración o problemas vasculares. Es muy importante que llamen al 911 y llamen temprano, que no esperen mucho porque lo que estamos viendo es el número de personas que están falleciendo en sus casas ha subido más de 47% de febrero a julio. Un 47% es el número que ha incrementado de personas que fallecen en sus casas por no llamar para ayuda. Queremos estresar que no tengan temor de llamar al 911 si tienen una emergencia médica o emergencia de seguridad. La información que nosotros colectamos es específicamente para el tratamiento de los pacientes y para pasar esa información a los doctores. Nosotros no compartimos nada de la información de la persona a cualquier otra agencia. Para nuestra comunidad indocumentada, no tengan temor llamar al 911 por temor que su información vaya a ser pasada a otra agencia. Eso no pasa. Con nosotros, la única manera en que nosotros podemos asegurarnos que es el paciente seguro y pasar esa información al doctor es tomar la información, pero no la compartimos con cualquier otra agencia. Y quiero estresar que no esperen mucho. Si tienen problemas de emergencia médica o emergencia de seguridad, que llamen al 911 sin temor a nada, sin temor a ir al doctor, porque los doctores y los bomberos están haciendo todo para asegurar que estén prestando el servicio prácticamente y seguramente a nuestros pacientes. Gracias.
Buenas tardes. Lo que queremos decirle de nuevo a la comunidad hispana, especialmente a la comunidad que es inmigratoria, que indocumentado, que no tenga temor. No tenga temor a hacer dos cosas. Número uno, no hemos hablado de esto hoy, pero ya que estoy aquí, el censo del 2020 es muy importante. El censo del 2020, tenemos que llenar el censo y reportarnos, porque si no, muchos impuestos federales, esos dólares no van a venir a Houston y va a perjudicar todo lo que hacemos bueno para esta ciudad. Los parques, las bibliotecas, todo lo que hacemos es importante que todo el mundo esté contado. Acuérdese que el censo no se puede compartir esa información con ninguna agencia de migración, ni con el ICE, ni con ninguna agencia de migración. La otra cosa que estamos viendo que el doctor Percy y el alcalde ha hablado, cuando tome su examinación del virus y el virus COVID-19 es positivo, hay muchos hispanos que tienen temor a reportar con quién han estado. Es muy importante, si vamos a combatir este virus y vamos a ganar contra el virus, que si usted es positivo, que por favor no tenga temor, dígale a la salud pública y a los médicos con quién han dado para poder esos contactos reportarle a esa persona sin decir su nombre, que ha estado alrededor de una persona que sí está positiva para poder combatir el virus. De nuevo, esa información, como dijo el jefe, como ha dicho en inglés el alcalde y el doctor Percy, no se puede compartir con nadie. Así que adelante, que aquí estamos para su seguridad, para su salud y para ustedes como ser humano y como miembros de esta comunidad. Gracias.